Welcome, everybody, to the North Oakland Republican Club AG Debate, and we are also partnering with Americans for Prosperity, and thank you all for coming. Great. I'm Matt Marco, president of the North Oakland Republican Club. I'll be co-moderator tonight. I've got Senator Mike Kowal here as my co-moderator. Mike Kowal was the floor majority leader in the Michigan Senate. He's also been a candidate for Congress and county executive. He's been in debates on both sides. He's been down this road before. Anyway, I would like to personally thank Waterford Supervisor Gary Wall for allowing us to use this facility tonight. Gary, would you like to say a few words of welcome?
Good evening. Welcome to Waterford Township. The last time we had a board meeting with this many people here is when we were going to a single garbage hauler in Waterford Township. We're not talking trash tonight. Honest, we're not. So anyways, welcome to this debate we're having tonight here for the Attorney General. Glad to see everybody could make it out. Before we start, I'm going to ask everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Both born and unborn. Hoorah.
Thank you.
Anything else? I'd like to introduce our partner in this, Americans Prosperity, Annie Patnoid, the State Director of Americans Prosperity. Annie is the State Director, and she's also going to sing the national anthem for us tonight.
I will say, I don't know if I'm loud enough. Can you all hear me if these mics are good? Okay, great. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight and the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, what say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Hey, Annie, while you're here, you guys have at the table out front there, you've got a certain issue that you guys are promoting tonight.
Yes, for those of you who haven't had the chance, when you come in, please, or when you go out, I guess now, if you didn't when you came in, please when you go out, make sure you stop at our table and sign the Let My Kids Learn petitions. This will allow more funding to go to parents to empower them to choose the right school for their child. So please do sign this. It's important that you do, and that we move the needle when it comes to making sure that funding is going to students and to families and not just to an institution or a building.
Yes. And I will also say we've got a gentleman here with a Secure My Vote petition, which we've been promoting at Newark every month. If you have not signed it yet, I'm telling everyone, if they have not signed it yet, you will have it here. So, and also, you've got some to hand out for people to get filled, right? Secure My Vote. I think everybody's familiar with it. And people in the back, there are open seats scattered among here, so come on and find one. It's okay, you can fill in the gaps here. Okay. I'd like to, Mike Kowal is going to introduce the candidates and elected officials that are in the audience tonight.
Well, before I get going on that, I want to have the opportunity for all the precinct delegates, the backbone of the Republican Party. If you're a delegate, please raise your hand.
All right.
Thank you for your service to the Republican Party. Starting off the list with Lena Epstein, who's running for the UM Board of Regents. Lena, I saw you there.
And former congressional nominee in the 11th District.
We're going to let our Attorney General candidates introduce themselves here in a minute. But moving on, we have Matthew Denhatter, who is U.S. Congress for the 11th District. Matthew, how are you? We have Michelle Smith, who's running for State Rep for the 58th District. Carolyn Setters, and Carolyn's running for the State Rep for the 19th. And Vance Patrick is running for U.S. Congress, 13th.
That's it? Okay, very good. We got somebody at what?
Dr. Z for State Board of Education.
Dr. Z for State Board of Education. And I'd like to say that next month is the state convention where us precinct delegates, will be picking such candidates for the ballot as the Attorney General. So we're so glad that there are so many precinct delegates here, because it means you're doing your job, your due diligence, and your homework, and we appreciate your coming here. As a precinct delegate, I know it's difficult to decide when we have 3 excellent candidates. Any one of them will be a huge improvement over what is in there now, so. I would like to quickly just talk about the rules. We had all the questions submitted in advance to make sure that they were all good questions for the Attorney General, not general questions. We wanted to make sure there were no gotcha questions. We don't want any questions that will promote any sort of ammunition for Dana Nessel. So we were very careful to ensure that this is going to be something useful for us to make our decisions here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you guys who all sent in your questions. There were a lot of really good, thoughtful questions, and we appreciate your doing that. It sounds like Reveille is being played in the audience there. Let's keep everyone from falling asleep. Better than taps. Quickly, the Attorney General's office, just a few words about it. The Attorney General actually oversees over 500 lawyers, and they're the ones that enforce the laws in this state, keeping us all safe and all that. So it's very important, and we know that a lot of laws are kind of selectively being enforced right now, so we're looking forward to getting a new Attorney General. We did this debate 4 years ago, 2018, and right here in the same place. And hopefully we won't be doing it 4 years from now because we'll have an incumbent Republican. So the rules of the debate, we've got in fact, I'm going to, would the members of the NORC Board of Directors raise your hands and all that? Very good, thank you. And I know we've got Steve Perry, our treasurer, is walking around in the back there. Our timekeeper tonight is going to be Julie Day, right here. We got Jim Teenel out there somewhere. He's the former chairman of Oakland County Republican Party. He's been on our board. And I can't see who else in our board is scattered amongst. Did I miss any of you guys?
Steve Perry is here.
I just said Steve Perry, didn't I? Oh, Linda Jolie-Cor is here. Okay, very good. Steve's wandering around in the back. Okay, so just quickly, the rules for tonight. Each candidate is going to be given 2 minutes in an introduction, and they can introduce themselves. The order that we're going to have them is randomly picked, and every question that we ask will, it's randomized. So we're going to be continuously changing the order of what candidates have. So we're going to give 2 minutes opening statement. If in the opening statement, after a candidate's already spoken, and if another candidate calls out one of the other candidates, we'll give that candidate gets called out an additional 30 seconds to respond to that, just out of fairness. We're trying to be as fair as possible here. The moderators will read each candidate will be given up to 2 minutes. Up to, because I remember 4 years ago, some of them were answered in seconds, and it was kind of took me some by surprise. They'll get up to 2 minutes. Each candidate will be given a 30-second rebuttal at the end, and then if a candidate is mentioned by name after his chance for rebuttal, he'll be given an additional 30 seconds. And each candidate in the closing statements will be given 2 minutes to close. And if a candidate is mentioned by name after they've had their chance to speak, they'll give that one that gets called by name will be given an additional 30 seconds. So I would like to we're going to start with and Julie Day here will be the timer. She's got paddles here. She'll hold up, what does it say? You got one that says 2 minutes, you got 30-second paddle, you've got a 15-second paddle, a 10-second paddle, and a timeout paddle. So if you don't want to be put in timeout with Julie Day. So we will start off, and I'd like to, hopefully, in your opening statements, talk about our main goal here is to defeat Dana Nessel. Why you think that you could be the one that could be most able to defeat Dana Nessel. And we'll start off the time right now with Tom Leonard.
Well, good evening, and thank you very much for being here. I've been very clear that Dana Nessel is by far the most radical attorney general, I believe, not just in the history of the state, but the entire nation. And every time my team and I wake up every day, we ask ourselves, what are we going to do to unite this party to defeat her in November? And I say we because we are the business owners that she shut down. We are the ones that have grandchildren and children who are suffering through mental health issues right now during the largest mental health crisis because she shut them out of their schools. We are the ones that lost our loved ones in nursing homes. We are the ones in 2020 that had to sit back and watch her as she put her thumb on the scale in favor of Joe Biden in the 2020 election. We are the ones that have loved ones that are in law enforcement that she is not standing by. And when we go into this election in November, we have to put up our best. We have to put up somebody that understands this office that can win in November. And we got to ask ourselves, do we want to put up somebody that has 20 years experience working with the Republican Party, helping get conservatives elected, hitting doors, working as a precinct delegate? or somebody that happened to show up within the last year and started a GoFundMe account raising $400,000 off of our hardworking grassroots activists? Do we want somebody that has been a prosecutor, that has been in the courtroom, versus somebody that stands up and gives stump speeches about how they're going to violate people's constitutional rights? Do we want somebody who has been through an FBI background check because they were nominated to be a U.S. attorney versus somebody who right now, news reports are saying that they were sanctioned, they performed illegal billings, and actually assaulted their clients? Do we want somebody that has the team in place, ready to win, that is endorsed by Right to Life, endorsed by the Police Officers Association of Michigan, FOP, and is leading in the polls? I am that person. Thank you.
Ryan Berman?
Thank you. Thanks, Matt, for putting this together. Again, another great event from Newark, seeing a lot of friendly faces in the crowd. Just to be clear, he wasn't talking about me. I'm the only candidate here who has won tough races. I'm the only candidate here who has been vetted, went against the Democrat machine, where they just spent close to $2 million statewide money against me to take over my House seat. Control of the Michigan House came down to right here in Oakland County in my district. They called me dead man walking in Lansing. When I stood up against Governor Whitmer, against the lockdowns, saying that it was unconstitutional, leading a lawsuit against her, going on TV, radio, newspaper articles, saying it shouldn't be up to one person to make these decisions, they told me to back off, that that's not the right message, you're too conservative for your moderate district. I did it anyways. I'm principled. You need the right messenger and the right message. It resonated with people. It didn't matter whether you agreed or disagreed with what Whitmer is doing. I said that wasn't the question. Should it be up to one person? And people understood that our constitutional system of government of checks and balances, that wasn't the way. So I was able to win by bringing the right message, by working across the aisle, being one of the most bipartisan representatives in the House without compromising my principles, still rated the 6th most conservative member of the Michigan legislature, both the House and Senate. I'm the only candidate here now who's going to take on Dana Nessel with that message, with winning in Southeast Michigan, with a law enforcement background, being a reserve police officer, special prosecutor, firearms instructor, and as an attorney both in criminal and civil practice.
Matt DePerno.
Hello, everybody. I will beat Dana Nessel in November. I am a fighter. I have fought the unconstitutional government intrusions of mask mandates, vaccine mandates, critical race theory, and I stood up after the November 2020 election. I fought and exposed the fraud in Antrim County. I immediately filed a lawsuit where I exposed the truth, and I will continue to hold government officials accountable. Over the last 2 years, I've actually been the only candidate out there who has actually stood up for these things. I've been doing Dana Nessel's job, and I will continue to do it because she doesn't want to do it for you. As a constitutional attorney, I am the only candidate with a track record of actually standing up and fighting for citizens in this state over the last 25 years. Unlike my opponents, who have never even filed a constitutional claim, and unlike Dana Nessel, who uses her office every day to fight against you and to promote her own agenda. Now, I'm not going to sit here, people, and be attacked by a paid lobbyist from the Lansing Swamp who cycles money to his wife's consulting firm and was politically in bed with child sexual assault accused victim or Lee Chatfield. We're not going to put up with that tonight. Follow the money, people. Follow the money. It leads directly back to Lee Chatfield. But thank you to the North Oakland Republican Association and Committee tonight. Thanks for everyone for coming out here tonight. I know you got a busy schedule. And, you know, this is what our founding fathers envisioned when they set up this republic. We need experienced constitutionalists right here. I'm endorsed by Donald Trump. I'm endorsed by Mashawn Maddock. I'm endorsed by Marion Sheridan, Diane Schindelbeck, and Bernadette Smith. I will defeat Dana Nessel in November 2022.
Okay, I have the first question. I'm going to start with Mr. DePerno. Mr. DePerno, during my time in the legislature, and I believe my two colleagues that were there with me, we voted on digging a tunnel under the Straits of Mackinac to secure Line 5. Dana Nessel and our governor immediately put a restraining order on that and basically broke state statute by not allowing this tunnel to be built. As Attorney General, how will you secure the protection of the Great Lakes, and how will you ensure that this tunnel is completed on a timely fashion?
Well, the first thing we have to understand is the litigation filed by Dana Nessel is entirely political. What the Democrats are attempting to do is artificially inflate energy costs to force people into green energy. As soon as I'm elected and sworn in, we will dismiss the Line 5 litigation filed by Dana Nessel, without question. What she's doing is unconstitutional, and she doesn't even care how the people in the Upper Peninsula or northern Michigan get their energy. They love the idea that every one of you right now are paying up to $5 in Michigan for gas. It doesn't faze them in the least. We will end this. We will restore this state back to a constitutional republic.
Mr. Leonard, same question.
Was that me? I'm sorry.
The same
Yes,
question.
you know, pretty much the same. I mean, you look at what she is doing. This is once again Dana Nessel picking and choosing which laws she will and will not enforce at the expense of every person in this room. Think about this. If that tunnel were to shut down tonight, energy costs go up in this state $2.2 billion. Every single one of you will start paying 11% more for your fuel. Tens of thousands of people will no longer be able to heat their homes if this line shuts down. Half of the jet fuel at the Detroit Metropolitan Airport will be gone immediately. And she is doing this not because she cares about anybody in this room, but she cares about her left-wing environmental activists. I know you often hear people say when they run for office they are going to do something on day one. Let me be clear. When I'm sworn in as Attorney General, it's going to be January 1st, 12/01 of 2023. Unfortunately, a state court will not be open on New Year's Day, but the first business day, we are going to walk in there, we are going to dismiss this suit, we are going to build this tunnel, we are going to create jobs and make certain that we do nothing to drive up energy costs for everybody here in this room. Thank you.
Ryan, same question.
Same question, same answer. So, you know, when I announced that I was running for this position in August, I did a press release, and one of the main issues was this, Line 5. Dana Nessel campaigned for Attorney General on shutting it down. I think that's improper use of her office. She's weaponized her office. And I'm sure we'll get into all the different areas later on in this debate, but especially this, she's already decimated our economy by letting Whitmer run amok, standing aside, but also physically decimated our communities by allowing the dams in Midland to flood because she wouldn't let the operators lower the lake levels, citing the freshwater mussel. It's absolutely wrong, unacceptable. And on day one, first business day courts are open, that lawsuit is being withdrawn. She's already been shot down in different courts and continues at it, misusing her office, misusing taxpayer funds. She's wrong for Michigan. She's wrong for us. She needs to be stopped. and that's why I'm running for Attorney General. I'm the only one up here that can beat her.
Anybody want rebuttal time on this? 30 seconds, I don't think. We'll go to the next question if there's no need for rebuttal. The next question. We had a meeting where we highlighted at the North Oakland Republican Club that there's been over about $10 billion paid in unemployment fraud in Michigan alone. $10 billion in unemployment fraud. My question is, do you plan to prosecute this and the potential of corruption within the government and its administration where all this money may have gone? And I'd like to start with Ryan Berman.
Thank you. Absolutely. You know, it's a shame of how the administration has mishandled that and Governor Whitmer appointing the wrong people to be overseeing it. But it's not just this year. We've had many problems with the unemployment, with their computer system that had artificial intelligence going through processing claims and flagging fraudulent claims, and it was 90-something% inaccurate. And I actually had to handle a claim for a client about that, where the Attorney General's office was going and prosecuting based off of this faulty information. Just today in the House, I voted for a budget supplemental that was sponsored by Chair Albert to put another $1 billion into the fund so it doesn't cost our businesses more money to keep that going. And that money also included appropriations for the Attorney General's office to hire more part-time employees, or like full-time employees, but on a temporary basis, to root out fraud. And that's what we need to do. And the Attorney General's office, over the last year and a half, where was she? Where are they doing their jobs? And they're just asking for more money. We're making sure they have the resources. It's up to the office to actually do the work. And when I'm the Attorney General, I'll be doing the work. Thank you.
Tom Leonard.
This has been the biggest flaw in this Attorney General, and that is she has done everything she can within her power and ability to do nothing but cover up for this governor. Absolutely, there needs to be an investigation to determine where this fraudulent money went, but it doesn't just stop there. Let's talk about this nursing home crisis. Folks, Gretchen Whitmer was one of 5 governors that signed an executive order forcing COVID patients into nursing homes, despite the fact that every single health expert across the state told her not to. And we have just found out within the past couple months, the administration was not honest about how many perished in those homes, and it's thousands more than what they originally told us. But when I look at this crisis, you know what the saddest thing is? How many thousands perished that died from a broken heart because they were separated from their loved ones? On this trail, I have met people that were married to their spouses 50 or 60 years, had never been separated until the actions of this governor and this Attorney General. Our elderly, our most vulnerable, that were not able to hug their grandchildren or see them for that final holiday or that final Christmas. And this Attorney General won't even ask a question about what happened. In fact, last Friday, during a news dump at 4 p.m., she issued a press release saying, "This is a done deal. I'm not going to look into it." There needs to be an investigation on day one. Imagine, just imagine, how much different this state would be today if we would have had an Attorney General that would have walked across the street, sat across the governor, looked her in the eyes and said, "Governor, with all due respect, if you try this for one more day, I'm going to hold a press conference. I'm going to tell these people to go back to work. I'm going to tell them to put their kids back in school. And I'm going to tell them to go visit their loved ones because what you are doing is unconstitutional."
Matt DePerno.
Thank you. We need someone in this state, someone elected in November on the Republican ticket who actually has filed a lawsuit in their career, and that's me. We don't need people who have spent a couple years doing low-level arraignments and issuing warrants. We need an experienced constitutionalist and a fighter. I am both of those things. We do not need a progressive Republican registered lobbyist who will use the AG's office solely for the purpose of raising dark money. We need experienced people. That's exactly what we need right now. On day one, when I'm elected and sworn in, I will start an investigation into every scandal covered up by Dana Nessel over the last 4 years. This includes this unemployment fraud. This includes her efforts to cover up the fraud committed by Jocelyn Benson. It includes the fraud committed up by Governor Whitmer. When Governor Whitmer sent elderly to retirement homes, knowing they would get sick or die, she did it for political reasons. She did it knowing they'd get sick, and that needs to be investigated. I've been saying it for months now. There was a 2019 study done by the Department of Justice that said Michigan is the most corrupt state in the union. And it's based on the idea that we do not have transparency laws. And we've had the chance over the last 5 years to enact transparency laws, and our legislature has failed. I will ensure that it happens. I will be in front of the legislature as often as possible to make sure this gets done.
Okay, I get the feeling that there's a request for rebuttal.
Just make something clear. You know, in March of 2020, I was hired into one of the state's top law firms, and within days, the pandemic hit. I'm a partner there. I was one of only 150 attorneys that was able to make a phone call to get an answer for clients. And guess what? The law says if you're going to get paid to talk to a legislator about an issue, you have to register. Now, my question for Matt DePerno is this. He has openly admitted that he raised $400,000 to talk to the legislature to get them to take up an audit, which is a policy move. My question for him is this. Did he violate our lobby laws when he got paid to go in there and talk to legislators about legislative issues? I followed the law, and I'm not ashamed of that.
Brian, did you want to rebuttal on that before?
Sure, actually, the law is that if you spend money to lobby and you spend money with those legislators, then you have to register. Just talking to that we all can do, and we all have done. That is the law.
If you are paid to discuss legislation and get the legislature to take up a legislative issue, you have to register as a lobbyist agent.
Only if you expend money at a certain threshold, I think it's whatever, 500 in a year, and going and taking them to lunches and spending money on them, do you have to register. Otherwise.
Matt DePerno?
Yeah, you know, I stood up for America. I stood up for America First values. I stood up for Donald Trump when nobody else would. I went out, I set my law career aside. I stood up for every one of you when I filed that lawsuit in Antrim County. And yeah, we raised money. We raised money from people across the country because they knew how important it was. Now, Tom Leonard went up to Mackinac this year, and he stood up there and he said, I haven't seen any evidence of election fraud. Let me tell you, people, 70% of Republicans in this state know that this last election was garbage. And I tell you what, over the last 2 years, I've fought against vaccine mandates, mask mandates, and critical race theory. I've been to hospital helping people who couldn't visit their loved ones. You know what? In September of 2020, Tom Leonard did an interview with Crane's Business Detroit, and they asked him, what have you done since you lost to Dana Nessel in 2018? And he's the only candidate up here who's ever lost to Dana Nessel. Keep that in mind. And his answer was staggering. What he said was, because of the lockdowns, because of coronavirus, I've been in my basement. He submitted to government order, never did anything to fight for any of you. He is the Joe Biden of this election.
Since Tom Leonard was mentioned, since Tom Leonard was mentioned, we'll give him a 30-second response.
I would just say, this is Matt DePerno again lying. Nobody can find one quote in any news article or video where I said there was no fraud in the last election. I've been clear. Do I believe there was fraud? Yes. Do I support an audit? Yes. The article that he's taking out of context was when I was nominated by Cranes Detroit to be one of the top 40 under 40 rising stars because of the work I did during the pandemic, and I told them that I was working from my basement. Guess what? My home office was in my basement, like many of you. That's what I was doing. I was working from my home office.
Okay, this next question is for Ryan Berman. Ryan, we're kind of on a theme here of corruption in the state of Michigan. The unemployment disability has been a big area of corruption. I'm sorry. The unemployment disability has been a big area of corruption in the state. This is an area that the AG should be pursuing. How would you move forward on that?
And this question is for all candidates. Ryan Berman's going first.
Well, I don't see how much this differs from the last question from UIA and the UIA fraud. I mean, that's, part and parcel. It's the same thing. So going, as the Attorney General, going and rooting out corruption, fraud, it has a little bit of another twist where we just saw this past week in the newspapers that the agency wasn't properly vetting the employees and the temporary employees. They didn't do proper background checks. So a lot of those employees were felons, had identity theft on their record, embezzlement. That's not appropriate. That's not what we want, and that's mismanagement. So does it rise to a level of criminality, neglect of duty, something like that? It's something that needs to be investigated, and I'll be investigating that on day one. But going back to some of the other candidates' answers on the last one of them.
Get on the microphone, we can't hear you back here.
How's that? Thanks.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah. Just like anything else, it's with the nursing homes. All of this stuff demands investigations. I see Senator Runstead standing in the back. He actually did an official letter requesting Attorney General Nessel look into the nursing homes, and she said no. Rep. Alexander had to get the Auditor General to look into the issue, and that's where they found a couple thousand more deaths than were initially reported by the Department of Health and Human Services. And again, as Mr. Leonard said, the Attorney General said, even with that extra information, she doesn't see anything to warrant further investigation. That's absolutely wrong. I stood up as a representative, sponsored a resolution in the House during this COVID crisis opposing the governor's nursing home policies. It passed the House with me fighting the Democrats over this, and I'll continue doing that, representing you all as the next Attorney General.
Tom Leonard?
Yeah, if we're gonna talk transparency, I think each of us has to have a history of transparency and being open and honest with every one of you. Now this morning, I hope everybody saw it. If you haven't, make certain you take a look. A Bridge article came out, and this was the title: Michigan AG hopeful Matt DePerno fired over padding false billings. And it said in the first sentence, according to his firm, he committed fraud, deceit, and dishonesty with regards to bogus billings, duplicate billings, and write-offs, in addition to other wrongful acts. Now, as an attorney, every single month, I owe my clients an accounting of every minute that I put into a matter. I have to be transparent. I have to provide them an accounting. As I've already mentioned, Matt DePerno showed up the day after the election using our president's name, taking nearly $400,000 from every one of you. And I've had people approach me across the state, and they've asked me, where did that money go? Anybody that contributed, you were Matt DePerno's client. With that type of history, tonight I am calling on him to produce an accounting of everywhere that $400,000 went, to be transparent and open with every one of you.
Matthew?
Yeah, I agree that this is similar to the last question. We have to root out corruption. I've been saying this for months now on the campaign trail. When I'm elected and sworn in, I will conduct an investigation into Whitmer, Benson, and Nessel. Whitmer for what she did to the elderly in the state when she sent them to the retirement homes. Jocelyn Benson for what she did in the last election when she sent out 7.7 million pre-filled out absentee ballot applications. And Dana Nessel for covering up every single scandal. Now, I'll tell you this. The article that came out today was nothing more than just a liberal hit piece. And it came out because I'm the front runner. And I'm leading this race by at least 7 points right now. If Tom, and Tom knows this, that's why he's attacking me. He has to as the guy trailing in the back, right? 95% of that article was factually wrong. And the author knows it. So what are we going to do about that? I'll tell you this. I have been cleared by the State Bar of every one of those allegations. It is nonsense. It is nonsense, complete nonsense. But we don't need to get into that. The author of that article went all the way back and talked to people I went to high school with. That's how deep they're digging. They're digging because they know I'm winning this and they know I'll be the next Attorney General candidate. But again, as I said, I'm not going to sit here and be lectured by a paid lobbyist from the Lansing swamp who cycles money into his wife's consulting firm and was politically in bed with Lee Chatfield. Every one of you people out there, follow the money. If you follow the money, it will lead directly back to Lee Chatfield and the person who created him, Tom Leonard.
Tom, you have a rebuttal?
I just, I didn't think that Mr. DePerno could get any lower, but bringing my beautiful bride into this is a new low. But I will say this. I've heard him continue to mention Lee Chatfield. Think about this. These allegations against Lee Chatfield, most of them occurred in 2019. That is when I was going through an extensive FBI background check. Dozens of FBI agents were combing through my records, combing through my life. If there was something out there that would have come up, the only person making these accusations is Matt DePerno.
Ryan Berman, rebuttal? No?
You know what? Some of these
30
things.
seconds.
Do I get a rebuttal?
30 seconds. I was just telling you.
I don't know where to begin. I think they both have valid points, and it just shows there's baggage on both sides. And the only person who has been vetted by the Democrat machine, who has withstood all of their attacks, where they had to make up attacks against me, where I called Tom Leonard actually to try to file a defamation lawsuit. That's when I found out he wasn't a practicing attorney, but working in government affairs. I've already beat the Democrats. I'm the only one here that can win here in Southeast Michigan, that doesn't have the skeletons in the closet, that doesn't have the relationships, that doesn't have the negative attacks that will happen to both of these two. Thank you.
Tom Leonard, Tom, since you were mentioned, you want 30 seconds to reply to that?
I simply do not recall that conversation. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. We have a whole pile of questions here regarding election fraud 2020. This was probably the most popular category of questions that came in from all of you. Yeah, we were here, we're a lot of witnesses here. So I'd like to start off with this first question regarding it. As Attorney General, will you eliminate any internet connection to voting machines, tabulators, or other machines that could affect the elections? And should the Dominion voting machines be eliminated? And we'll start off with Matt DePerno on this.
Yeah, guess who found the internet connections? Guess who found the modems installed on motherboards? Guess who actually went out and fought to show what actually happened in the election? And every time I did it, every piece of evidence we compiled, I put out publicly in 21 reports. We were absolutely transparent in everything we did. Every single report vetted by computer scientists and forensic experts. We did something no one else in the country had done. We downloaded a forensic image of the Dominion voting system. No one's done it before, no one's done it since. And the evidence we put out was used in Arizona, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia, Nevada, California. So you tell me what I did wrong in that, right? And when I was doing it, there were congressional hearings going on, and a representative named Cynthia Johnson came out and she said, people who are challenging the election, she said, I want my soldiers to go out. You do it right, you make them pay. And no one stood up for me. Not any of these guys, no one else actually stood up for what we were doing. We stood up for America First values. We stood up for Donald Trump. We proved there was fraud in this election. Tom Leonard went to Mackinac, I repeat, and said, I've seen no evidence of election fraud. That is a fact. How do you trust a guy to get into office, to demand an audit, to demand an investigation, to show what actually happened when he doesn't even believe it? 70% of Republicans know the election was garbage, and I'll go out and continue my investigation.
Ryan Berman.
Yeah, so the question was about the machines being connected to the internet. And it's up to the legislature to make the laws. It's up to the Attorney General to enforce those laws. And I was proud to support a bill that banned the tabulating machines from being connected to the internet. It was vetoed by Governor Whitmer. It was vetoed by Governor Whitmer and even opposed by Jocelyn Benson, even though they said our machines aren't connected to the internet now. So if they're not connected to the internet, there's no plans to be, why would you veto that bill to say they couldn't? It just doesn't make sense. But going into, and maybe there'll be more questions on election fraud, it's a huge issue, obviously, for everybody in this room, and myself included. I've worked as an election day attorney, as a poll challenger. I worked as a volunteer lawyer on Trump team in 2016 on the recount here in Oakland County. I support a full audit. I do that because from a logical perspective, where you want to see evidence, if there's evidence out there that says something may have happened, we need to look into that. And you either find something or you find nothing. What's the harm? If the work is there, what's the harm of showing the work? More importantly, is if you find something, and what I, from day one after the election, my staff was down there at the TCF Center documenting everything that was going on. But if it was all done properly, why won't they show the work? Why is everybody opposed to it? I'm all about transparency and accountability. We need to know what happened so it doesn't get repeated in the future. It's not just our side saying it now, it was Hillary Clinton saying it then, Russian hacking, Russian collusion, and even called for a recount that I worked on. I don't want there to be any excuses on our side or the other side for when I beat Dana Nessel this year. Thank you.
Tom Leonard.
I would just, a couple things. I mean, first, I would just ask again that if Mr. DePerno is going to say I said something on Mackinac Island, produce one statement, one video clip, or one article where I ever said there was no fraud in the last election. I've never said that. You can't produce it. Number two, when we talk about Antrim County, what were the results of what Matt DePerno did? Produced more votes for Joe Biden. Number three, I'm going to renew my call, and I would ask the question, there are people out here right now that gave towards that $400,000 GoFundMe page that account that he set up that still do not have answers, I want to know right now, will he produce an accounting of where that money went? I'm transparent with my clients. Other attorneys are transparent with their clients. Anybody that gave to that, you are Matt DePerno's client, and you need to know where that money went. And I'm renewing that call. Will he produce an accounting of where that $400,000 went?
For people who have actually practiced law, you would know that someone who pays for legal services is not a client. Yes. The client is the client. My client was Bill Bailey, who's a hero in this country for what he did. And Tom wants to sit here and disparage Bill Bailey, a guy who stood up, put his name out there and said, I will stand up, I will take the attacks, the terrible phone calls, the terrible emails that he got and I got throughout this whole process. And Tom says we produce more votes for Joe Biden. Read the reports, my friends. Joe Biden won Antrim County with 65% of the vote. The Republican clerk in Antrim County was ready to certify that election next morning because she said, you can't do anything with machines. Machines don't lie. What we showed in Antrim County was 7,060 votes moved electronically. And it was caused by the mail-in ballot scam that Jocelyn Benson put forth. And then she told every clerk in this state to ignore signature verification rules. And then she allowed Zuckerberg to come into this state with $8 million and put collection boxes in strategic Democrat locations. This is what we found out. Read the reports. Tom doesn't know what he is talking about.
Mr. Leonard, you want 30 seconds? Okay, we'll move on.
This is a simple yes.
I'll take his 30 seconds.
Okay.
No, because I'll take his 30 seconds because I have to call out BS when I hear it. Okay, I read all the reports. I read everything that was going on with Matt DePerno in Antrim County. And when he says that it was the mail-in ballots and fraud, that's not what happened in Antrim County. What happened in Antrim County was a discrepancy when transmitting data because the local clerks didn't update their tabulation machines with a new race on there. So when it goes into the CVS file, it was put in wrong in the wrong column. It was quickly recognized and remedied by the Antrim County clerk, okay? What happened, we know because they did a hand recount. We have the ballots, and if there was really machine fraud and machine error, all you have to do is count the ballots. Matt DePerno said they wouldn't give him access to the ballots. He couldn't get access to the ballots anywhere. Well, my interns figured out how to do it. They're actually going to Antrim County tomorrow to scan the ballots. We went to Martin Township that was flagged by Seth Ketchel as a discrepancy area and fraud. We went in there and we scanned every ballot, and guess what? It came out the same way as the Dominion machines had it. Every single ballot was counted properly. You focused on the machines. That was a red herring to the real fraud that was going on, but I'm glad to hear you mentioning it now. But at the time, you told, when Rudy Giuliani was looking into the TCF Center, the mail-in ballots and everything that happened down in Detroit, you said on a news station, hey, that's wrong. The real issue is the machines. And you've totally flip-flopped.
Matt, you want 30 seconds to reply?
Yeah, Ryan's upset that I got on some news stations. But I'm glad that he's actually repeating Democrat talking points and reading Jocelyn Benson's press releases. That's good for every one of you to know where he actually stands on this issue, right? When we went to the hand recount in Antrim County on December 17th, what we found was staggering, and there's video out there if you want to watch it. In certain precincts, they ran out of ballots during the hand recount. The Secretary of State came over with a bag that said on the side, spoiled ballots, and said, count some of these. We found other discrepancies throughout the entire hand recount that Jocelyn Benson refused to document or talk about, but we got video of it. I'm sorry, Ryan, you just don't know what you're talking about.
I'm sorry, Matt, I do know what I'm talking about because I'm talking about facts. And in fact, anybody here that wants it, email my office, email me, and I'll give you images of all the ballots that we scanned. You can look at it for yourself. So either believe me, believe Matt, believe your own eyes, because I will give you the evidence, I will give you those documents, and you can do it yourself.
Yeah,
Listen,
Okay,
I'm not saying there isn't fraud. I'm not saying there isn't fraud and there isn't what happened in our election. It was unprecedented. But I will go through where the real fraud could have occurred and what the real problems happened in the last election with Jocelyn Benson sending out the unsolicited ballot applications, with Mark Zuckerberg and the Zuckerbucks, which was basically an end around of campaign finance laws to drum up artificial enthusiasm on the Democrat side. Maybe we'll get into that in the next question, though.
Well, the next question is going to be a softball for all of you.
I got to respond to this, though. Once the clerks receive those mail-in ballots and ignore the signatures and remove those ballots from the envelope and put them in a tabulator, you now have fraudulent ballots in the system. When you do a hand recount, you're hand recounting fraudulent ballots. That's why these limited risk audits are garbage. You can easily fool them and manipulate them.
And he just made my point that it's not the machines but the ballots.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much. Starting with Tom and then going to Ryan and then to Matthew. So one word answer. Would you support a full forensic audit of the 2020 election? And you don't need to elaborate.
Yes. Yes.
I do need to elaborate because I am the only member of the House that actually put forth a budget amendment to fund it.
Tom, I'll let you really quick.
Okay, and to me, I mean, because you're allowing for the elaboration here, I've been, very clear. Right now, nearly 50%, depending on the poll you look at, 50% of our population no longer trusts that when they go to the ballot and they cast a vote, that it's accurate. They are questioning the integrity of the ballot that they are putting into the machine. Anything that we can do to regain the trust of the voters of this state, absolutely I will support. I would support a forensic audit. Thank you.
Ryan, that was your answer as well, or you want to elaborate a little bit more? If not, I'll give it to Matthew.
Yeah, I actually did a budget amendment to fund a full forensic audit, what I called a comprehensive statewide election integrity review. It's all about messaging. Forensic audit has been getting a bad rap in the newspapers from Democrats, from other Republicans. So I called it an integrity review. Who can be against an integrity review? Well, they were, and it was voted down. But I stand by it, and I totally support it. And I already said the reasons why.
Matthew?
I mean, yes.
Well, on behalf of myself, I thank you very much for that answer.
The next question.
No,
I said yes.
I said yes, but since the Daily Beast said that I'm the originator of the full forensic audit craze, yes.
Next question. Was sending millions of absentee ballot requests by Benson illegal, and should she be prosecuted? Should Nessel be held accountable for not enforcing that law? And we'll start with Tom Leonard.
She certainly had no basis of law sending those ballots out. Absolutely not. The question would become, did she actually commit a crime under the Michigan penal law? I have not seen where she committed a crime under Michigan's penal law, but what I will tell you is she had no basis of law to do what she did. And had I been the Attorney General, I would have stopped it immediately.
Ryan?
Yeah, I echo Tom's remarks. I mean, the fact is from when that was happening, my office reached out to her trying to get access to information of what list she used, who was she targeting. My wife is a teacher. She's technically MEA retired. She got 4 absentee ballot applications. Guess how many I got? None. I believe that they targeted certain lists, unions, others, and especially in Democrat areas to drum up turnout for this artificial enthusiasm, because nobody was excited to vote for Joe Biden, that's for sure.
Matt?
Yeah, Dana Nessel sent out 7.7 pre-filled out absentee ballot applications. The Court of Claims has already ruled that that violated the Administrative Claims Act. That's an important thing to understand. When I'm elected and sworn in, we will start an investigation. And we'll look at a certain section of the code, 750.505, misconduct in office. And I'll tell you the elements. You have to be an elected official. You have to be doing your duty under color of law. You have to engage in misfeasance, malfeasance, or nonfeasance. You have to do something that taints the credibility of the office. So you tell me, every one of you, was she an elected official? Yes. Was she doing her job under color of law? No. Yes. Did she engage in misfeasance, malfeasance, or nonfeasance? Did she do something to taint the office? Yes. So I think an investigation needs to be made under 750.505.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next question. Ryan, you're up to bat. Can Michigan's AG do anything to protect the First Amendment rights from being infringed by big tech companies like Facebook and Twitter?
Yeah, so you know what, again, that the First Amendment applies to the government. The government can't restrict your First Amendment rights. However, what we've seen is that reports showed that the White House was communicating with Facebook to deplatform certain people. At that point, they're acting as an agent of the government. So I think it's extremely and especially warranted to look into these matters. But you know, coincidentally, just today, I dropped a bill to prohibit tech deplatforming and censorship from the big tech companies. Specifically, Twitter, Facebook, the big companies that have over 50 million active users a month, who are basically a common carrier, like a telephone company that shouldn't be able to censor your messages. So my bill was referred to Communications and Technology just today, and I had a talk with the chairman Hoydinga, who is enthusiastically looking to bring it up when we come back in a couple weeks from this in-district work period. So stay tuned on that.
Tom?
Am I up? Yeah, I mean, because big tech is actually regulated by the feds, it is very difficult, aside from bringing lawsuits, for the state's attorney general to really step in and do something. Now, think about this for just a moment, though. The Ayatollah of Iran, who is a known terrorist, to the best of my knowledge, still has a Twitter account, and our president does not have one. That is reprehensible. What Congress needs to do is step in and deem them a monopoly and break them up so that there's more competition.
Matthew?
I think the Attorney General can do something about this, because I think we will see, there's several lawsuits right now working their way through federal court that would deem big tech government agents. We'll see how those goes, but I think the Attorney Generals across the country, Republican, conservative Attorney Generals, should unite and bring that challenge. Let's use the power of the Attorney General's office to do that. Why do we got to wait for civil litigation to happen before Attorney Generals step up? Constitutionalists understand that. Progressive, registered lobbyists do not.
The next question is kind of a follow-up to this one, and it's kind of based on what happened in Florida under Governor DeSantis. They passed a law related to this. If Facebook or Twitter blocks access to a political candidate, would that be a virtual campaign contribution to the competing candidates? And we'll start off with Tom Leonard on that.
I would believe that would be. I mean, that would be, in my opinion, based on what you just asked and what you just said, that would be an in-kind contribution.
Mr. DePerno?
Yeah, I agree. I think there's an in-kind contribution there. I don't know specifically how Florida law works for election law, but I think under Michigan law, I think that would be an in-kind contribution.
Ryan?
Yeah, I would look into that potentially. Rep. Bo LaFave has a bill that is also working its way through the House where it would prohibit tech companies from doing that to candidates.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next question regarding transparency here in Michigan. Michigan's governor and legislature are exempt from FOIA requests. Does this conflict with other laws such as the Open Meetings Act, and can the AG challenge it? We'll start with Matthew.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to do something about the FOIA Act. We need to give people access to government documents. And right now, if you try to do a FOIA request in many areas, you get nothing but stonewall, and the government forces you to resort to litigation. Or they send you enormous bills demanding that you pay money just so they could start a review of the documentation process. So yeah, the Attorney General needs to step up and change these FOIA laws, or at least go to the legislature to demand that the laws be changed.
Ryan?
Yeah, I ran on transparency. I'm all about transparency and accountability, and that's why I was the lead sponsor of the Legislative Open Records Act, bringing in the legislature to FOIA, as well as the governor and lieutenant governor's office. It passed the House overwhelmingly, but stalled in the Senate last term. This term, again, I was the lead sponsor of the Legislative Open Records Act, went through those bills, and it's in the Senate. So I think that all of us here who agree with that should contact your Senator Runstead, you listening to me? And advocate for that passage. It's well overdue.
Yeah, unfortunately, as you mentioned, our laws block FOIA requests from the legislature and from the executive branch. And when I was House Speaker, that was one of my top priorities. We passed legislation, as Ryan said, overwhelmingly. In fact, I think it was unanimously. And unfortunately, it went to the Senate where sometimes things just go to die, and it didn't pass. But this has been something that I have supported for years. Now, I'm glad you asked this question, because one of the things that I would love to accomplish and love to do as the state's next Attorney General is, I believe we need to have a Chief Integrity Officer within that office, with assistants under them that not only prosecute and go after white-collar crime, but guess what? Works every day to hold government accountable. And I'm not talking about investigation of Gretchen Whitmer, which we've already talked about today. I'm talking about people in small towns with local governments that may try to get a FOIA request, and they are stonewalled, and they are charged hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, and they can't afford an attorney to go to court to get those records. That is wrong. This is an office that needs to be there for the people. There will be a Chief Integrity Officer in place, and if we have people in the state that are being stonewalled by their local governments and not getting information, we will step in and we will assist them.
I think this next question should lighten things up a little bit.
Define a woman.
Can
Tino is a mind reader.
Yeah, okay. The question is, can a person with a Y chromosome legally qualify to participate in women's sports at state-funded schools, and should the AG be involved in that? And we'll start with Ryan Berman.
I think what we're seeing here with these misguided individuals participating in women's sports where they're the, 400th rated swimmer, and all of a sudden they transition and identify as a female, and now they're the #1. So first, I applaud Governor DeSantis for passing that resolution, announcing the real winner. But as Attorney General and someone with 2 daughters, I think it's fundamentally unfair, especially for people that like to say follow the science and then ignore it in this case, to have to appease these people with their self-identities to go and give an extreme disadvantage to our children. And I would investigate, look into it, and if we need to change the laws, appeal to the legislature to make sure that happens.
Tom Leonard?
You understand, just in the past couple weeks, our state's Attorney General was arguing in the Supreme Court to allow exactly that to happen. Let that sink in for just a moment. I don't know how anybody can call themselves a feminist or care or claim they care about women's rights and try to advocate and allow what happened with this Yale swimmer. The state's Attorney General needs to protect women, and absolutely not should men be competing in women's sports.
Matt DePerno.
I'd say absolutely, the Attorney General needs to step in regarding state-funded institutions if they try this in Michigan. If anyone is watching these Supreme Court hearings, you see that we are losing our country. We're losing our country to the radical leftists. And why is that, people? We even have Republicans in the Senate right now, Mitt Romney, right? Ben Sasse, who are upset with the Republicans for bringing up some of the attacks on this Supreme Court candidate. That's why we need real conservatives to get elected, real conservatives in this state to get elected, constitutionalists, not people who were the chair of Kasich's presidential campaign in 2016. We need real conservatives, people, not fake conservatives.
Ryan?
Did you respond, Ryan, already?
You went.
Oh, you
You did.
started.
Tom, did you have?
We all went.
You're all set. All right, next question. As AG for the state of Michigan, would you file a lawsuit to protect our state from illegal immigrants being brought in by the federal government in the middle of the night? That would be Ryan Berman. Let me repeat the question. As AG for the state of Michigan, would you file a lawsuit to protect Michigan from illegal immigrants being brought in by the federal government in the middle of the night?
Absolutely. And in fact, my office is working on a bill for any federal agency that does these kind of things to notify the local officials, local representatives, and including sign-off. But, you know, that's the role of the Attorney General, is to protect the people, protect the citizens of this state. I've done it, and I know my opponent's here. Well, actually, my opponent is Dana Nessel. But how I view attorney... I told this story in a more, laid-back setting, but my dad lived in Florida on the ocean, and I was visiting one time, and we were coming back, and the most amount of law enforcement I've ever seen. Helicopters in the sky. They had a roadblock. We said, "What's going on?" Checking in our IDs. And they said a boat washed up to shore, and it could be drug smugglers or human traffickers. Go home, lock yourself in, sit tight. That's not the type of person I am. I went back to the house. I grabbed my dad's Glock and his night vision scope and went out and did a patrol, made sure the area was secure. And when I was up, went on his roof to have more vision. I looked down, and there was somebody staring down right back at me. I was like, is that my brother? No, no. And I'm like, I can't shoot him. He's not, posing a threat. But I went down, ended up grabbing some other officers. They jumped the fence. We ended up corralling them, catching them. There was 8 of them. He had a satchel. When they said, oh, is this the guy you saw in your scope? I'm like, my scope was green. I just saw somebody wearing plaid and had a backpack. Like, this guy didn't have a backpack. Found the backpack, $50,000 in cash, 2 keys of cocaine. There was a dead body at their thing, and they were drug smugglers, human traffickers. On my day off, I stopped that. Imagine what I'll do as the Attorney General.
Tom? I remember in 2006, when I was a young college student, or it might have been my first year in law school, and I was a little naive at the time, and I was backing a congressman for president by the name of Tom Tancredo. Does anybody remember that name? He was a congressman out of Colorado, and I was naive, and I thought that Tom Tancredo could actually become the next president of the United States. And a friend and I, we traveled around the state. We were so proud of him because he was the only one that was talking about securing the borders. And that night, before he left, we had dinner somewhere around here in southeast Michigan at an Applebee's. And I remember him looking at us saying, guys, you do know that I'm not going to be able to win, right? I said, Tom, Congressman, what are you saying? And he says, well, I have to make certain that Mitt Romney and John McCain are going to focus on this issue, and I got to be on that debate stage. That's why I'm doing this. I said, Congressman, you've got such a great message. How in the world can you not win with that message? And he says, let me say it bluntly, boys. I'm too short, fat, and bald. He said, but I'll tell you what, if anybody ever shows up that's taller than me with some nice hair and a little bit of celebrity status, and they bring this message, they are going to be the next president of the United States. Never in a million years did I think a decade later it was going to be Donald Trump. And when he was campaigning, I never thought he could secure the borders as quickly as he said that he would. But probably even most important and even sadder, I never thought a president could destroy the borders as quickly as Joe Biden has. The simple answer to your question, absolutely, I would bring that lawsuit.
Yeah, I'm just one of the guys like you, really, a common person. I'm not a politician. I don't have a story like this for every single question. But I will tell you this. Something happened today in Michigan. Dana Nessel joined a lawsuit with 18 other radical leftist attorney generals. And in that lawsuit, she filed to end the Remain in Mexico policy. What she's trying to do is increase illegal immigration in this state. She doesn't care about it. She wants it to happen. She wants, well, I wouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that. The media will write something bad about me. She doesn't care about sex trafficking because she's not doing anything about it. We have to end illegal immigration. We have to do something about sex trafficking. We have to send investigators into every one of these nests and hubs across the state. No one else in this campaign is talking about the idea of ending sex trafficking except me, but we see what's happening right now with Nessel joining this litigation. It has to end. When I'm elected and sworn in, I will dismiss that litigation.
Next question. Holland restaurant owner Marlena Hackney was arrested by order of Dana Nessel just before her scheduled appearance on the Tucker Carlson show to talk about the state's lockdown orders. Was her rights trampled, and would you as AG do something about it? We'll start with Matt DePerno.
Yeah, I know Marlena, and she's a great lady, and absolutely her rights were trampled. What happened to her should never happen to anyone in this state. When Tom Leonard was in his basement because of coronavirus, I went out and actually helped Marlena. We fought for freedom in this state. We said never submit to tyranny. If I was Attorney General, that would have never happened to her. None of this would have happened. We would never have gone into lockdown. We'd never let people's constitutional rights be trampled.
Tom Leonard.
Absolutely, that should not happen. Were her rights trampled? Yes. And think about this. Think about this Attorney General for just a moment. Let me take you to Ingham County. We have a prosecutor right now in Ingham County that several months ago issued a memo to law enforcement across the county telling them that she was going to implement a social justice agenda, and that if they pulled over vehicles for speeding, not using their blinkers, or having broken taillights, and they found illegal guns and drugs, don't bring those warrants to her because she's not going to authorize them. Surprise, surprise, the city of Lansing, our capital city, is now in the top 10 most dangerous cities in the entire nation. The elected Democrat sheriff in Ingham County held a press conference with law enforcement across the county saying enough is enough. We need a prosecutor that's going to stand with us. This Attorney General was nowhere to be found. Had I been the Attorney General, I would have been standing right there with that sheriff saying, if this prosecutor won't do her job, I will do it for her. And that's what we're going to do. You think about what she's using her resources for. She won't protect victims in Ingham County, yet she will send troopers halfway across the state to arrest immigrant restaurant owners. Who knows Carl the Barber, or who has heard of Carl the Barber? Right now, and I'm proud to have the endorsement of his attorney, David Coleman, right now, many think that that case with Carl the Barber is over. Dana Nessel is still going after him and trying to fine him $9,000 because he failed to sweep up some hair in between haircuts. We have an Attorney General that's going after an 80-year-old barber and an immigrant restaurant owner when our capital city is becoming one of the top 10 most dangerous cities in the entire nation. I hope you can see I'm angry about this, and on day one, people like Marlena's never going to have to worry again. People like Carl the Barber's not. We're going to reprioritize this office. We're going to hold these prosecutors' office, and we're going to fight violent crime.
Ryan.
This is the exact reason why I'm running for Attorney General. Not only did Dana Nessel stand aside and let Gretchen Whitmer do whatever she wanted, but then she weaponized her office to go after people that spoke out against it, went after people that defied those unconstitutional orders. Even after the Supreme Court ruled that Governor Whitmer's orders were unconstitutional, Dana Nessel used her office to go after these individuals administratively. As Tom Leonard just said, still going after Carl the Barber. It's absolutely wrong. She's politicized and weaponized her office. Republicans have been afraid to speak out and afraid of her. You shouldn't be afraid of your Attorney General unless you're a criminal. When I'm the Attorney General, I don't care if you have an R or a D next to your name. We happen to be Republicans, the party of law and order. I'm not going to go after you for your exercising your First Amendment rights, go after you for wanting to put food on the table for your family. What Dana Nessel did was absolutely wrong. And yeah, if I was the Attorney General at the time, anytime Gretchen Whitmer held a press conference, I would do one 5 minutes later and say, guess what? Everything she just said, not going to happen. It's unconstitutional. I'm not going to enforce it. And if she tries doing stuff, we will go after those officers for you. Thank you.
The University of Michigan has been sued for allegations of sexual misconduct by faculty members who have been long deceased. Should there be a statute of limitations for such cases?
you know, this is a good question. I think there should not be a statute of limitations when you're dealing with these government employees. We see this thing come up continuously lately. It is hard to file lawsuits against the government. I've been doing it for years. I'm the only one up here on this panel who's actually filed a 1983 claim. I've actually filed RICO claims. These are tough cases. Sometimes it's hard to develop the evidence within a 3-year period. So you need more time sometimes. Sometimes, you know, I've been involved in many cases where you don't actually end up just getting the discovery you need until years down the road. I've had cases against the government that have lasted 10 years before you actually acquire or get evidence. Sometimes it's computer evidence, sometimes it's other types of evidence. These are hard, tough cases. And I filed cases then after statute of limitations have expired because we got evidence and discovery late, only to be met with judges who don't let the cases proceed, right? Only to be met with issues of immunity of government employees. So I say not only do we need to extend these statute of limitations, but we need to eliminate immunity for government employees. Every one of you out there, if you did some of the stuff your elected officials do, they would prosecute you, they would send you to jail, or they'd bring a civil action against you. And we have elected officials who escape that type of lawsuit or criminal prosecution because of immunity and statutes of limitations.
Brian?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate this question because this is one of my main issues in the House of Representatives. I am the lead sponsor of the Empowering Survivors legislative package. My issue deals with governmental immunity, and again, all of my major legislation is bipartisan, both Republican and Democrat co-sponsors. Rep. Karen Whitsett is the sponsor of the companion bill extending the statute of limitations. We introduced this package in 2020, and because of COVID and all that, didn't really progress, but ended up reintroducing it in this legislative cycle, had hearings on it, and since then, there was a lawsuit settlement with the U of M. I'm still trying to push this legislation forward and got commitments to move it out of to another committee that's willing to hear it and push it forward. Unfortunately, there's a lot of pushback. But the statute of limitations is there, and we can't be too willy-nilly with changing these things. But in this case, absolutely. And as Matt DePerno said, it's not just the statute of limitations, it's government immunity. My bill focuses on, and it was narrowly tailored, again, trying to get things through the House without pushback. My bill said if a government agent knew or should have known of abuse and didn't stop or prevent ongoing abuse, they shouldn't be covered by immunity. I don't think that's something that should be that controversial, but there's a lot of special interests that have pushed back against that. And as a statute of limitation, just like in the Dr. Larry Nassar scandal, opens up a retroactive window to allow survivors to come into court, beating that immunity, and then extending the statute going forward for people that would potentially happen to in the future, unfortunately. Thank you.
Tom?
Should there be statute of limitations? Yes. The question is, what should that number be? You may remember when I was House Speaker, we actually expanded, it was one of my efforts, we actually got it done in a bipartisan fashion to expand the statute of limitations during the Larry Nassar scandal. You may also remember that when no elected official across the state would step up for those women, I was the first elected official in the state of Michigan that called on Luanna Simon to resign. And I took a lot of heat for that, especially by Democrats. And I knew the pile-on had started when on Christmas Eve, then candidate Gretchen Whitmer called on her to resign because she knew politically where that thing was headed. But when I did it, it wasn't politically popular. The question becomes, what should that number be set at? If you set it at 75, 80, 90 years, how difficult is it going to be for anybody to mount a defense if every single witness in the case is dead? So that's what you have to ask yourself. It's not whether or not there should be a statute of limitations, it's what should that number be so that it is fair to these victims and that they can get justice, but you're not putting any civil defendant in a place where they can't bring a defense because the witnesses are gone.
Thank you. This is going to be the last question. Time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it? It sounds like Karnak. Last question. And then we'll go into closing comments. And this question is somewhat related, and it's a two-part question. Nessel has set a precedent of prosecuting former Governor Snyder for the Flint water fiasco after he had already left office. Do such elected officials have qualified immunity? And the second part of the question is, should Whitmer be prosecuted after she leaves office after this election? And we'll start off with Ryan Berman.
Yeah, I think, the precedent has been set by Dana Nessel. I don't have all the facts and evidence in front of me of what she was looking at or the previous prosecution team. But I think going forward and how everything is handled, it's been a lot of wasted resources and taxpayer funds. Matt DePerno earlier said about misconduct in office, but there's also common law neglect of duty. There needs to be an investigation, whether it's statutory or common law, what happened, who knew what, and when did they know it. So I will absolutely, on day one, do an investigation of Governor Whitmer, not only about the nursing homes, but her campaign finance violations and anything else that has been brought up. I think it's irresponsible for person sitting next to me to say that he's going to arrest Dana Nessel, Gretchen Whitmer on day one. I think it's an affront to our justice system, and he's fundraising off of it. That's not the type of rhetoric that should be happening, and that's the type of thing that the independent voters don't like. In this election, it's going to come down to every single vote. It's not going to be just a wave election that somebody can ride on. We need the soft Democrats, the soft Republicans, the independents to sway our way. We need the right candidate, not just a Republican candidate, but the right Republican candidate who can get those crossover votes, crossover voters, and talk to the independents, who will be a voice of reason in the Attorney General's office and not just get another partisan Attorney General.
Matt?
Yeah, I think this is an easy one. We're going to investigate Governor Whitmer for her misconduct in office. Negligence is a lesser included offense, so sure, we'll have that too. But, I haven't said tonight that I'm going to arrest her. I said we're going to investigate her. And I've pointed out statutes that I think apply. Something else I want to point out, though. Tom called me out tonight for an article that was written by the fake news media. Dana Nessel declared early on after the election that she was going to investigate me. When she said that, I went out and hired a law firm. It was Tom Leonard's law firm. I think Tom Leonard needs to take a good look at his ethics for calling out one of his clients in a forum like this. I think him and I have to have a bit of a discussion after this. I think the Michigan Bar might be interested.
Tom, you were called out, 30 seconds.
Yeah. What I can tell you is I have never represented Matt DePerno on any issue. But what I can also tell you is this, going back to the question at hand, this is something that has really, really troubled me about Matt DePerno, what he has said about this issue. I have been very clear, there needs to be an investigation on day one. But I was a prosecutor. I believe in due process. I believe in upholding the Constitution of the United States. I'm sorry, is it just there? I thought this was my answer.
He gets an answer.
Oh, this is his answer.
Oh, yeah, this is my answer. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, 2 minutes. Yeah, I'm sorry.
2 minutes.
Yeah,
I'll get another minute.
I was just getting my, I'm sorry, I was going to my answer.
Minute and a half.
But tonight, yes, Matt DePerno might be talking about an investigation, but several times before in speeches and at debates, he has said, I will arrest them and lock them up on day one. And I have actually had judges call me and say, Tom, what in the world is going on? Those types of comments, if there's an investigation and charges are brought, that case will get dismissed immediately. We can't have an attorney general who has made these types of comments and has tainted cases like this. That's why I will never, ever sit before you and say that I'm going to prosecute somebody or lock somebody up on day one just to get an applause line from every delegate in this room. Will there be an investigation? Absolutely. But guess what? Dana Nessel and Gretchen Whitmer are entitled to due process just like every single one of us in this room are tonight, and I will make certain that that happens.
Thank you. Now we'll go to closing comments. Each will have 2 minutes, and then there will be 30 seconds if there's somebody who doesn't have the opportunity to respond to being called out. So we'll start off with Tom Leonard.
Well, again, thank you very much for having me. I'll say this. Everywhere I go and everywhere we go, the room is packed with people across the state. Momentum is on our side, and it has to be. We cannot afford another 4 years of Dana Nessel. As I mentioned earlier, and as we all know, she is the one that locked down our businesses. She is the one that kept our kids out of school. She is the one that prevented us from seeing our loved ones. She is the one that put her thumb on the scale in favor of Joe Biden in 2020. And she is the one not standing with law enforcement right now as we see a spike in crime across this entire state. I have no doubt that I'm in the best position to defeat Dana Nessel in November. Number one, who's heard of the Trafalgar Group? They were the one pollster out of South Carolina. They were the one pollster in 2016 that predicted that that predicted that Donald Trump was going to be the next president of the United States, and in 2020, they were the most accurate pollster. Right now, I am the one person that they have leading in the polls. Number two, we have built a strong coalition. I have received the exclusive endorsement of Right to Life of Michigan. I believe this is the first time that Right to Life of Michigan has gotten involved in an open attorney general race. We were endorsed by the Police Officers Association of Michigan 2 weeks ago. Last week, we were endorsed by 45 county prosecutors, and just today, we were endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police. We've got the team ready to go. We've got the resources ready to go. We are defeating her in the polls. I look forward to being your nominee. I look forward to working with every single one of you to make certain that Dana Nessel never serves another day in the state again. Thank you.
Ryan Berman.
Thanks everybody for being here, sitting through this. It was a little entertaining at points. I want to have you guys think about something. We're up here battling. This is a battle. This isn't the war. Don't focus on the battle, focus on winning the war. Whether your guy can win the battle, it's irrelevant. Who can win the war? The war is against the Democrats. The war is beating Dana Nessel. Who has the ability to do that? We've heard from Tom Leonard just now. He already lost to Dana Nessel. He already had all the endorsements and she still beat him. He was in his prime in 2018. I campaigned for him in 2018. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. I wish he was the Attorney General right now. If he did as well as I did in Southeast Michigan, he'd be cruising the re-election. He can't get it. The voters already rejected him. And unfortunately, what has he done since then? It's just been negative. He's a registered lobbyist and his Chatfield ties, and he has potentially his own campaign finance issues that he may be dealing with. This guy, when he announced he was running for Attorney General, what did Dana Nessel do? She tweeted a picture of a dumpster on fire. I think it's pretty accurate. Look at this Bridge article. This guy has not been vetted. Fraudulent billings, $80,000 in court sanctions, accusations of fraudulent transfers, where then he had to settle these things. His skeletons have skeletons. I'm the only guy up here who has beat the Democrats, who has gone against everything they had. They threw everything they had at me. They'll try to do it again. They will not do it. I am confident if I have your vote and I secure this nomination, I will beat Dana Nessel. Yeah!
Matt, you're next, but Tom, we'll give you 30 seconds after Matt's done. Since you just had-
You know, about
we'll give it to you now.
2018, what I would say is I'd remind everybody this. 2018 was a very tough environment for Republicans, and I think we all know this. And guess what? I outperformed the top of the ticket by nearly 8%. I won 6 counties that even John James did not win. I won Macomb County. I won Kent County. I won Eaton County. I won Isabella County. I won Leelanau County, and I even won Saginaw County. The only statewide Republican in the state that year to win those counties. We got this close in an environment that was very tough for Republicans. She will be beat in November.
Matt?
Well, John James was still the top vote getter, got a couple, 22,000 more votes than you. And the only reason it was close is because 200,000 people that voted for Benson didn't vote for Nessel.
Matt?
Look at Ryan, he's pulling 5% and he's growing up here right before your eyes. Listen, over the last 2 years, all you delegates have to think of something. You are hiring the next Attorney General. Who are you going to hire? Are you going to hire someone who's actually been doing this work for 25 years? I've filed many claims across the state in federal court and state court. I've argued hundreds of motions. My opponents, one of them has never even filed a lawsuit in his entire career. How are you going to run the Attorney General's office if you don't know how to litigate? Over the last 2 years, I've got in cases involving mask mandates, vaccine mandates, critical race theory, the election, right? I've got involved in issues related to the shutdown. I am a fighter, and I will never stop fighting. And Donald Trump recognized it. That's why he endorsed me. He knows I will never stop fighting for you, right? Michonne Maddock from the state party GOP has endorsed me. She knows I will never stop fighting for you. I am the only candidate in this race who has the experience to defeat Dana Nessel. I am the one that's ready to do it. We are ready to defeat her. We have money on hand, and we are ready to go after her. In 2018, Tom Leonard dodged her, refused to debate her. I will never refuse to debate Dana Nessel. I will get on the stage any day, any time, and debate her on any of these issues. Now, do I get 30 seconds too? Because Ryan's calling me out?
You had a chance to talk after that, so no. But you did just call out Tom Leonard, so we'll
Yeah,
get to
and nothing could be further from the truth in terms of refusing to debate Dana Nessel. The bottom line is this: we agreed to debate, and we also had an agreement that the other 3 candidates that were running, there were 3 other candidates in the general election, they too would be able to take that debate stage. And within days of that debate, Dana Nessel essentially gave an ultimatum. Either the other ones were going to be pulled off the stage, and I believe she was worried one of them may pull votes from her if they were on the stage. Either they're pulled off the stage or she wasn't going to debate. I was left with one of two options at that point. Stick with my word to those other candidates or go and debate her one-on-one. I stuck with my word with those other candidates, and when she refused to let them on the stage, I said, I'm not going to do this unless these other candidates can be up here with us like we gave them our word that we said we would do.
Thank you. And I want to thank everybody.
And I get a second to reply, too.
You want 30 seconds?
And I'm glad, I'll take 15 seconds. You know, I'm glad that Matt's a fighter. That's great. I love fighters. But I like fighters that win. He doesn't win. He's actually the only candidate up here that's never won. He's never won an election.
Matt, you've been called out.
Yeah,
He's run for office and lost.
I'm not, yeah.
30 seconds, Steve.
I'm not a politician, so I think it's an unfair, listen, people, I'm not running as a politician. I'm not running for office. I'm running to be hired by every delegate in this state as Attorney General because I'm the only one who has the actual experience to do it. Now, one other thing. Back in 2018, Tom Leonard said it was a tough environment for us Republicans, right? You remember you heard that? Why was it a tough environment? Because in 2018, Tom Leonard, as Speaker of the House, decided not to do his job. He had the opportunity to bring 3 bills to the House floor, one involving marijuana, one involving redistricting, and one involving the election. He did none of that. The Democrats took advantage. They brought every one of those issues as citizens' referendum, put them on the ballot, and those issues of marijuana, redistricting, and Proposal 3, which actually codified election fraud, every one of those were used by the Democrats to pull out their voters. That's why Tom Leonard lost in 2018. It's his own fault because he didn't do his job.
Tom, you get 30 seconds to reply.
Again, going back to if Matt understood the law, he would understand that in order to have gotten those off the ballot, you actually had to have a majority of vote both in the House and the Senate. The votes were not there to take those issues off the ballot. The Democrats were not going to give one vote. And quite frankly, we had at least 18 Republicans in our caucus that said, I was not sent here to legalize marijuana. I can't vote for this. So the bottom line is the votes were not there. I was Speaker of the House, not dictator of the House. The votes were not there. That is why those were on the ballot.
All right, I want to thank everybody for a very enjoyable debate. Matt, you've got, you want more time, Matt? I think we'll call. I want to thank our candidates here very much for coming out. And I also want to thank Americans for Prosperity. Also, our next meeting is going to be April 28th for Newark at the Overtime Grill. We've got James Craig coming and a congressional candidate, and we'll be talking about the budget fiasco. I want to thank Gary Wall and all of you for coming. Thank you very much.